but his targets are underdogs. And comedy traditionally has picked on people in power.
So Z Squirrel here saying, Dave Chappelle should listen to George Carlin. There's nothing virtuous or brave about picking on one of the most marginalized groups in society. So I'm just going to play this. And actually, before I play this, there is a lot of, I don't even know, I guess, debate over this topic. But really, there seems to be a complete lack of nuance when it comes to how those that are defending Dave Chappelle, how they are defending him. Because I have been very clear about, I think Chappelle is still funny. I think he's a talented comedian. I thought a lot of the special, especially the first half, was in fact hilarious. I watched the special twice. The first half, a lot of the jokes landed. I thought they were great. Even though you could argue a lot of it was kind of recycled from previous specials. But when he was talking about being Team Turf, he was not making a joke. It wasn't a punchline. People weren't laughing. He was making a statement. He's Team Turf and gender is a fact. Those were two things he said that were clearly ignorant, that weren't jokes. So for people to be like, oh, he's just joking. He wasn't making a joke when he was talking about those things, which makes it even worse. But let me play this George Carlin clip, as I think he says it a lot better, clearly, than I could ever.
I would defend to the death his right to do everything he does. The thing that I find unusual, and it's not a criticism so much, but his targets are underdogs. And comedy traditionally has picked on people in power, people who abuse their power. Women and gays and immigrants are kind of, to my way of thinking, underdogs. And, he ought to be careful because he's Jewish. And a lot of the people who want to pick on these kind of groups, the Jews are on that list a little further. You got women, gays, gypsies, blah, 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 and then suddenly you find Jews. And
suddenly Andrew's arrested.
Yeah, so, obviously he should do what he wants. And
why does he get away with it, do you think, then?
Well,
we have never laughed at jokes about the poor.
He's appealing. I think he's appealing largely. I think his core audience are young white males who are threatened by these groups. I think a lot of these guys aren't sure of their manhood because that's a problem when you're going through adolescence. Am I really? Could I be? I hope I'm not one of them. And the women who assert themselves and are competent are a threat to these men, and so are immigrants in terms of jobs and the
so that's why we as an audience then will laugh.
You say we. I don't think you're.
No.
But I think you're
collective we.
I think that's what is at the core of that experience that takes place in these arenas. Is a certain, a sharing of anger and rage at these targets. And I'm sure Andrew isn't that angry at them. I'm sure he's playing it as a comic.
So there he's talking about Andrew Dice Clay, who, big comedian in the 80s, the 90s. His target was always the marginalized. And he did it he was basically playing a character on stage. So it's not the same as Chappelle. Chappelle's himself on stage. That said, of course, comedians say things all the time that they don't actually mean in terms of, fake opinions and that kind of thing. But they do that in the context of making a joke, which is why it's really bizarre to try and defend Dave Chappelle saying he's Team Turf, when all that is doing is clearly marginalizing and just further marginalizing the trans community in a way that is not even doing it in a joking way. So George Carlin, I think, is or was fantastic. Obviously, he's no longer with us, but I think he lays it all out there, and you can apply this exact same perspective to Dave Chappelle and others like him today. Again, that isn't to say Dave Chappelle isn't salvageable. That doesn't say that you should cancel him. That's just to say it's perfectly fine for us to critique things that people say, especially when they have massive platforms that have an impact on society. I also don't think, as I've said a million times, I don't think Dave Chappelle had bad intent, but intent does not matter as much as your actual impact when you are a celebrity the size of Dave Chappelle. So he can say, or people like Jon Stewart, who defended Chappelle, can say he didn't have bad intent. You're probably right, he didn't, but impact matters more than intent, which is why you have to be aware of what you're saying and how you're saying it when you have that kind of platform. But George Carlin there, I think, laid it out very well.